confident are you that he will be speaking on behalf of the committee?
Well, that's the key question, especially if the dot plot ends up with one missing dot, i.e. his. I think that it behooves him to speak for the committee. If he's going to be, half as succinct, Nathan Powell, anybody that's going to cut the press conference short, we'll have to wait and see. But I think that given Morse has not made any major changes of the Fed staff at the Federal Reserve Board in Washington, I think his main goal right now is to build a coalition to cement his leadership, leading this group of 18
Hello, Gary.
Hello, Ken and all.
So how are you?
I think I'm okay. I've been working on the synthesis a little bit, and I was wondering what our goal might be for this, because the first synthesis session didn't do much in terms of synthesis, in my opinion. Remember that if you look at the transcript of that or the video, somebody asked about libraries and ontologies, and that was most of the discussion as opposed to dealing with many of the sections. And so what I tried to do is think about the synthesis and wonder if we can make assignments and people can actually flesh out something that would produce a product, at least for online, if not a publication. So that's sort of what I was thinking, preparing for this meeting, how to make it productive, get people's involvement, maybe make assignments and things of that nature.
That's a great idea, although I was thinking of it being the focus of the communique meeting
Yeah, so
rather than
I
this
did a
meeting.
synthesis on the second part because we had supposedly a synthesis in the first part. I did a draft of that, but I've made an improved synthesis of the first part. But one of my challenges is if I'm using AI agent tools, if I don't actually have a transcript, we're missing things. And in some cases, I don't even have slides.
I think I have transcripts.
Well, we can look at, I don't know what
Yeah.
what we want to spend our time on here, but there are certain places where transcripts are available. But for example, Nicola's presentation, I don't think we have a transcript there.
I'm,
And a person like him is particularly important to have that. Now, it looked to me almost every time, if not every time, Ravi was sort of turning on a AI companion to do at least a summary, but I don't see the summaries either.
I think I have these.
Gary, quick question. This is Ram here.
Yes, I see.
Yeah, I looked at this thing and it looks like a very good start. The thing that you've done, but this is for the second part of because I'm a little
Yes,
bit confused here because you have some of the first parts of it and some of the second parts of it.
This is for the second part because I thought that's what we were doing at
Yeah.
this session. I already had done a draft of something for the first session, but we didn't get very far on it, and I've redone that. I didn't plan on filling this session up with that because we have enough to do in this second half. But I do have a draft of the first part too. But as I noted to Ken just before, there seems to be a problem with getting access to transcripts for some parts of it, such as Nicola's presentation. Sometimes I didn't have slides, sometimes I didn't have the transcripts.
Isn't there a little bit of an overlap between 1 and 2, the sessions?
There's some relationship, but they are significantly different. I mean, the educational aspect of part 2 is unique. Interoperability crosses both of them, I think. It could be combined.
So I think that, like, for example, you in the second paragraph, I don't know which version I'm reading. It says synthesizes major themes from Ontology Summit 2026 and situates them within broader developments in ontology research, knowledge graphs, and neurosymbolic AI.
Yeah,
right? Okay, look at
that's basically the second part.
But first part also had parts of these things.
Yes. But the draft you saw anyway is the second part.
Gary, could you share your synthesis for the rest of the people? We can certainly
do that
here?
if you allow me to be a co-author or a co-host. I can do two things.
You can do it anyway, but
I'll try to share. I'll try to share. Let's see. Oh no, that's not the right share. Stop share. Got to find the right window here. This is the manuscript. I have a portion of the manuscript that I thought was more important than others where it does a synthesis. So I used a series of AI agents to extract information from what had been presented. If I had transcripts, I had slides, things of that nature. So this is a summary of the second part of our summit. Okay, so we have an abstract here of some length. You can see that it's talking about the contributors, where I had information, largely on interoperability and education. And then it has a section on each of these, some common themes. I'm going to go through this quickly for now, just so people have a sense of it. It has individual sessions, such as Will Sobel's on manufacturing. It's sort of a paragraph. That I assume somebody like Mike Bennett, who's often here, maybe here now, would sort of look at this and say, well, that's part of it, but here's what the important thing was. You'll notice that there are references in here. I asked it to develop references for this, and so forth. And as you go through, it does a synthesis on convergent themes, and there's like 3 here. Semantic failures are primary, not derivative. Makes an argument about that from MT Connect data, for example. Talks about AI amplifies rather than eliminates semantic risks, which is an interesting way of describing it. Again, has a reference or two. And ontologies are complementary, not competing. And therefore, it talks a little more
Gary,
about
Gary, can you stop there for a minute?
Sure.
On the ontology. See, some of these things, like, for example, the ontologies in AI are complementary. And that's pretty much of a theme of last summit also, neurosymbolic computing. So we might have to kind of put a pointer or something like that there.
Well, yes, that's right. We can ask it to sort of make connections to prior summits, particularly the 2024 one there, for example.
Yeah, I've got a meta comment around here in terms of, I mean,
Sure.
I think this has done a great job of summarizing the things. So, I mean, you're already at about 10 pages or so, except for cleaning up things. I don't know how much people can do. And the other thing is that, as you rightly mentioned, you might have to just send it to the presenters and say, well, is this what you meant, kind of thing. That's what I think at this stage that could be done.
Okay, certainly, let me stop that. I can share something else, I think. Let me see if I can share this. Let's see. So I also have slides. Essentially, I took the article we created, the AI and agent and I asked it to make slides for briefings. And so this is just a small part of that for orientation.
Well, I'm sorry,
I can also share.
Gary, what did you use for this? What AI system you used for this?
I used 3 different agent systems for it. So for the writing, I used chat as a final, but I used different agents for different things. Perplexity, for example, is much more cautious about getting references. So I sort of often start there so I get more of a focus. And I have an account on Claude Code, which essentially can do a lot more and do it repetitively. So I can build a series of agents and workflows that'll do a refinement job. So, it's not simple. Right now, it's not one thing for me. It's a series of things.
Again, if you look at this slide here,
Yes.
LLMs, knowledge graphs, and ontologies, that's kind of interesting because knowledge graphs and ontologies are used interchangeably in many places.
Well, we've certainly had that discussion in part. I think of knowledge graphs as broader than ontologies.
Yeah, that's right. But you're kind of
a backbone. Knowledge graphs are data oriented to begin with, and so forth. So
I'm just making an observation there. So I understand what you mean.
But in any event, I'll share these slides for people. And again, it's very high level, but it gives you some major things as talking points. As you can see, and one may disagree with a point here or there, but that's possible. We had like a 101 on knowledge engineering, and so we want to work that in somehow. These are sort of some of the conclusions.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about manufacturing standards, for example, things like that. And here's the educational slides. And here's a conclusion we'll stop at. Very high level, but I can share that. And John has his hand up for a comment.
Yeah, I sent to the list. I sent a list of 12 slides, and slide number 7 is really the most important one, and that's the one that shows the cognitive loop, cognitive cycle, and that's one thing that is not available in basic LLM. So the LLM problem is that they cannot do the checking, that they are basically if you look at the cycle of abduction, deduction, testing, and induction, that the only thing that LLMs do is abduction. All they do is make an educated guess. And the best you can hope for is that their guess is better than anything else. But the problem is that their guess is based on probabilities, and it's very easy for somebody, say scammers or whatever, to just flood the internet with a whole bunch of garbage so that the probabilities of the garbage become very high. And that's why you must have that cycle, that the abduction is just a guess. You must do the deduction to derive the implications, and then the testing to see what it means, and then by induction you go and you make the changes. So that cycle is absolutely essential, and that's the only protection you can get from LLMs. And those LLM systems that do not have that cycle, there are some that do, but ones that don't have that cycle, they just produce garbage. They are, it just one of the worst examples is that they have to pay these guys in Kenya something like $4 a day to do that go through all this garbage that's on the internet and flag it, because the problem is that the probabilities by themselves don't do that. They have to get this flagging so that they can get a picture of what kinds of stuff they should get rid of. And the thing is, if you have that cycle of testing, you have an opportunity to have absolute accuracy.
So before we let Janet have her comment, I just wanted to say, I got your slides too late to sort of integrate into what I had done already, but I can certainly try to do that. I assumed it would be sort of a more of a view of a critique and a way forward, and we could include that at that, some part of the article, the draft. So Janet, you have a comment?
Yeah, I think that the John's cycle would be a really good way to organize this content, and to array the LLMs are good for the hypothesis generation, for the guessing, for the abduction, and the ontologies are good for the deduction. And using the cycle diagram would be a way to provide a sense-making core, where here we are with there's 20 years of content that needs a metasynthesis that I think John is exactly on point, where John, you said the LLMs produce garbage. I think they produce abductions. They produce, which may be garbage in a situation where you want something else, but they're really good at producing guesses and rhetoric and, as you say, dialogue, that's that part. But I strongly would urge that we use the John's diagram as the organizing core for showing how these things are complementary.
Actually, I have a question on that also, following it. Like, for example, Gary actually used LLMs to produce these summaries. Okay. And they have done a reasonably good job if you look at it, okay, from all the presentations. So that means that even though they're doing these guesses, okay, they seems to be doing something else around here. I'm not sure it's like a purely, they seem to have encoded some of this. Actually, I've agreed to that. When I asked Gemini a long time ago, do you have knowledge graphs in your system? And it said yes. So they seem to have one layer which they're not telling us. That's what I think.
Their
Otherwise, it's
summaries,
kind of
though,
hard to. Pardon?
their summaries, though, are often very flawed. I have used them to do summaries of things that I have written,
Yeah.
and they just miss the point. They just don't get the point that I've been trying to emphasize, and they often include erroneous conclusions, and so I do not trust those things at all.
No, John. Actually, the issue is the following. The thing is that in terms of the cycle, I have done some experiments to you write the first, let's say, 10 pages of an abstract of something, and then ask it to analyze it and whatever it is, and just make it into organized thing. What Gary did right now. They do a reasonably good job, but it's not that they do a perfect job. So what do you do then is next time you have a cycle iteration going on and you remove erroneous things. Now, one thing that these things kind of do, which is very interesting, is that they write what are known as homogeneous sentences. So in other words, when they write these sentences, there is no humanity in there. I mean, we all agree on those things. Okay.
By all means, LLMs are extremely valuable for producing good output, good natural language output. No question about that. But the point is that you must have, in addition, you must have that checking. And that's the point that those slides that I just circulated to the gang, that slide number 7 shows the cycle where there's the abduction is the guessing. That's what LLMs do perfectly. Excellent abduction.
Yeah.
But the next point is that they cannot do the induction, the deduction. They don't do reasoning. If you're lucky, they will find a program somewhere that does reasoning, and they will mimic that program. But they don't by themselves have the reasoning built in, and then they don't do the testing where they test to see whether this thing is correct versus other data that you've got, and then they don't do the induction where they add the corrected material to their knowledge base. So the point is you need that cycle.
Or you need multiple agents doing these different components. Yeah. Another interesting thing about the language models is sometimes you get a sort of a very homogenized report back that is sort of superficial. And then if you can aim it and say, but the core idea here is really like, for example, if Gary goes back and he says, use this idea of the reasoning cycle and now take the content that you produced and generate some insights about how the content is related to the reasoning cycle. Sometimes it elevates its ability to think, quote unquote, and produces something more insightful and sophisticated if you give it a prompt in the right direction. So yeah, back and forth, multiple agents doing oriented toward different capabilities. I think this is a good opportunity to bring those ideas out around the reasoning cycle.
So I had my hand up. I wanted to mention that I have some limited experience with trying to make the writing better. And essentially what I do, and I haven't built an agent to do this systematically, but I've done a bit of it, is to say, take a couple of lines which seem to be a claim. And I say, what is the evidence for this claim? And it can look into the slides and it can look into the transcript. I also say, go to Google Scholar, for example, or I give it a source, and it'll come back with a couple of references, which I can then look at. Some of them aren't as relevant as others, but some of them, when I look at them, I find to be relevant, and I use them as a reference for that claim. So it helps build out the article.
All right.
So what are the next steps here then?
Well, I was proposing that people that I share and John shares what we've done, and that people who are responsible for some sections like interoperability, people organize that. Todd is on here, for example, and Mike was part of that. I don't see him yet. Would look at what's been provided and say, well, here's what you really need to write. So they would improve that. They may look at other parts so they feel like competent and make suggestions. There could be other people on this call who haven't necessarily done a track, but feel an interest in a certain area and want to sort of suggest improvements or things we missed and so forth. So I think I'd like to come out of this with some assignments for, I believe, Ken, we have another meeting next week. Is that the last one on the schedule? Is that
Last
right?
one on the schedule is next week.
Yeah, so I would wonder if we could come out of this meeting with some assignments, volunteer, of course, to see sort of how to make things better by next week and have a discussion. I can also provide a summary and draft article for the first half of the summit too, which I hadn't done up to this point, but I have available. So that's sort of my proposal.
Well, I guess next Wednesday is going to be too tight for many people in a sense because we are entering the holidays on Friday.
Yeah.
But Dimini, your thought is very good.
Yeah, I like this plan.
Yeah, the plan, sorry.
Right. Who among those who are here today are interested in participating in this effort?
And while people are thinking about that, can I just ask another question? What is the goal of our product? Now, in the past, we've tried to draft a single article for a publication. I'm not sure we did that last year. We've done that in the prior years. And the question is that people's goal and interest?
Well, Gary, I think I thought the idea was to have a summary. You're talking about a 20-year. This is the end of the communicate for 20 years. So you're talking about a 20-year thing. And there may be bits and pieces from the past also that need to be incorporated. So that's going to take a little bit of time because not everything that was said during the summit actually reflected all that we have done over the 20 years. That was the fundamental thing.
It might be two separate publications.
And Ken actually has done a summary, I thought, of the past.
Yeah, I've done some work on this. I've also,
Gary, I
have
think
made progress on the 2025 communique, so that will be coming out.
Okay, good.
So, Todd, are you interested in participating right now?
What do you mean interested in participating now?
Meaning,
hello? I think
would
I'm
you
transmitting
like
audio.
would you like to volunteer to help with one section of this synthesis and later communicate?
Well, I thought that was incumbent as the convener of the interoperability section.
Yeah, that's what he was asking.
That's one of the
you'd
responsibilities
like.
you sign up for when you decide to do it.
So
yeah,
do you have any draft synthesis of the interoperability now? Have you started on a synthesis of interoperability?
No, I'm behind in writing things up, Gary. But thank you for running that stuff through the LLM. That's a really great help to start writing things.
Okay.
Did I answer your question, Kenneth?
You did. Great.
Okay. May I make one more comment? I think Gary's suggestion that there need to be two separate documents is a good one. Trying to jam everything for 20 years and this most recent summit into one paper would be a serious challenge for any writer.
Yeah, the other thing I say about that is that I think the 25 years and some of the reflections of people that were involved it's worth itself having a separate focus. I wouldn't want to miss that and try to jam everything, as you say. And then we had some rich presentations on some things that follow. So I think that deserves its own sort of focus.
Well, I just want to emphasize that those 12 slides that I sent, and as I mentioned, slide number 7 has the cognitive cycle, and the next several slides emphasize that, and they show exactly why that is required. And that cognitive cycle is absolutely essential because once you have that abduction, it's just a guess. And if you're lucky and have good probability selections and all that, you're most likely correct most of the time. But when you're doing something like banking or something that requires absolute precision, you must be either 100% correct or say, I don't know. So you can say, I don't know, or that you can say that no information available. But when you give an answer, it must be correct to the actual, to the last penny. In banking, you cannot allow any kind of errors. It must be absolutely correct, or it says transaction cannot be performed. And that is why you must have that available, and you can do it. There are some systems that do it, including that DeepSeek system from China, as well as some other computer systems that have that kind of checking built in. And that's what we have in our Permion computer systems. We do that absolutely essential. You cannot get by with just a guess. You must have that checking, that testing cycle.
Janet?
Sounds good. Janet, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so I haven't gotten any slides from either of you, so maybe I'm not on the list for this group though. But I'll volunteer. What I'd like to do is to take John's cycle and look at the things that people have raised as persistent stumbling blocks over the years, and what's the relationship between ontologies and AI and knowledge graphs and semantics and whatever, and show how the failure to understand that there are these different components in the cognitive cycle have caused people to be speaking at cross purposes. So if one can articulate the nature of the different components and use that, then some of the persistent problems of explaining what ontologies are and how they can help can be addressed. So I'd like to take that part. I don't know how it would fit in, but I think a number of people raised the obstacles to getting ontologies to be adopted, that kind of thing, and especially the looking back over 20 years. I'll look for that kind of the negative issues, the problems, rather than the positive things that are going on now with the solutions.
So, Gary, you
Yeah.
put something on the chat?
I'm just posting a few things from some of the work as examples. Yeah, Janet probably didn't receive the draft I sent it because I sent it out to the people that are on the board, and I guess I didn't think of have the organizing committee as an email list for this year, so I didn't want to send it out too broadly.
Okay, that's good. I think almost an entire paper on this issue of the cognitive cycle might be appropriate. See, I'm taking some notes here. Okay, another aspect of the second half of the summit was education. Um, is anyone here, or John or Bill here today? John Beverly.
So I built a summary of that. I'll post a little bit in the chat for people's see if it's of interest. This is just the first part of the summary. I think I had a transcript of that one.
But Gary, the one that you have here is which one? 1220 agents suggest references for draft materials. Is that the one you're talking about now, or you put one more? Gary, is that the one which says core thesis ontological engineering uses formal logic and shared semantic structures to overcome information silos?
The one I just pasted on had John Beverly's name, Ontology Engineering Tradecraft.
Maybe I don't know, let me see. Go back to chat again. Yeah. John, I saw that. I see that ontology engineering tradecraft John Beverly. So the other thing I have is that in terms of Kenny, you're talking about the education. Was there any new insights in the whole thing?
What was that?
Was there any particular insights from the Ontological Summit that we have for the education part of it?
That's a good question.
I don't think so, Ram. What do you have in mind as an insight?
I mean, something which we did not know before, in a sense that at least something which was summarized very well, because this was being done for some time. So,
the only
is there anything that stood out that
I think was
that
new,
we did? Pardon?
may not be an insight, is that University of Buffalo has this education program now for ontology engineering.
I mean, they've been having it for some time. It's just that what have you learned? That's what I want to know.
Only last couple of years. Oh, nothing new then.
Or at least we should kind of point out. Okay, the reason why I'm asking that question is that because if you're writing something to the audience, so what is that you're telling the audience, which is kind of at least a new insight right now? Not only an insight of summarization. Well, yeah, guys, we want to bring to your attention that this has been going on, and you probably don't know about it, or something like that.
Well, with education, it's a new program with, master's level and so forth, formal training.
Yeah, so I think that needs to be
somewhat new.
What I'm saying is that needs to be written carefully in terms of telling the reader that people are serious about it. And here is the little summary on that. And why is it important? That's the thing. I mean, we are all, it's like preaching to the choir. We all know, we are all thinking about ontologies. We think that they're important and so on and so forth. But one of the things in terms, because I'm not in the educational field right now, so I'm talking about from educational perspective, from academic perspective, what will people learn from there is a question. Okay. Or what should we be telling them, not what people learn from? What's the message you want to give?
Message about what, Ram?
Message about the educational part of the summit. We are only talking about the educational part of the summit now, I believe, okay, because we have discussed other things.
Okay,
before.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just education.
Yeah.
I would get back to the cognitive cycle, and I'd say that the thing that you can do with ontology is that you can complete that cycle. The LLMs by themselves just give you those guesses, those educated guesses, and there is always a possibility that they're damaged by garbage that they pick up on the web. But with the cognitive cycle, you can use your ontology to provide that background knowledge that enables you to do the deduction and the testing and then the induction to add more knowledge to your background. That complete cycle is absolutely essential, and it's what human beings actually do. They actually do that cycle.
Hey, John, so I think that's a great idea that one has to tie that into the educational part of it. And you have to say that because you need all these things, and that's why you need the ontologies have to be taught in colleges. And so this here is an example of a ontological engineer, whatever course that is going on, at least. So you can tie up those things from the cycle that you mentioned to the summit's presentations to something which we say that, yes, this is extremely important.
Yes, in fact, you can
Hey,
guarantee
Ram,
that the result you produce will be consistent with whatever constraints you have. So if you say that here are your fundamental principles that must be guaranteed, you can always ensure that your cognitive cycle will make sure that it doesn't let any things slip through the cracks.
So I'm just trying to tie that into the educational part. That's all.
Yeah. So Ram, what about this as an insight? The education for ontology development engineering and the necessary ontological analysis can improve your cognitive ability?
Yeah, no, that's good. But what I'm saying, Todd, is that John mentioned the cycle. We had some summit presentations. And so we say that these are very important to achieve that. That's about it. We need to make a statement.
And that cycle is not just mine. You find that cycle again and again, everywhere throughout AI and philosophy and psychology. It's there.
Yeah.
But there are only 2 sessions on education, right? And the question is, are you asking Ram what we should say about the sessions that?
Yeah. I want to tie the sessions up, okay, so that there is a flow, there's a theme that flows.
So one session was about the fact of the master's program, and then the other session was about more working with subject matter experts, as I recall.
Yeah, there's an important point here that education is fundamentally skill development in individuals. And we're not just feeding them, facts and principles, but actually giving them allowing them to develop their skills in working with all of these concepts and these techniques. That's what Bill was emphasizing. And certainly when I was still teaching, my courses were all skill development courses. I would have students, give situations to students. I would try to get students to, not just learn the facts, but also be able to use them in different contexts to have the skills in the end. Because, that's what's important about education, right? Is giving people the skills necessary for using these tools and these techniques. I think that's what Bill was emphasizing. He had this Ontology 101 concept of a skill development process for students. But there may be other ways that one can do this. I'm not suggesting his is the only way. It's too bad we only had those 2 sessions.
Ken, you just about made a nice point in terms of, what's the point you're going to make? Because now you say that if you to make it to be useful, here is a strategy. I'm talking about in the education part of it.
Yeah, and of course, education, skill development nowadays will also involve being able to use these AI tools. You use all the tools that are available.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't think the problem with the two sessions that we had was that they didn't give a kind of overall view of education. They didn't, they were kind of focused on what was being done at Buffalo, which is good. I think that's valuable. But there's much more to education than just that.
Ken, do you know if you have slides from Beverly's presentation? I'm not sure I saw them on the site.
No, I didn't get any slides from him.
Yeah,
Any
it'd be
that
better
I-
if we had the slides so we could think about it
yeah,
from what's missing there, what's included.
Bill promised to send me some slides, but he hasn't done so yet.
So I see, maybe it's Ravi, I think you might have mentioned that. I see a read.ai meeting person here, and which would be taking meeting notes, but I'm wondering if that person or you can have meeting notes from all of the meetings.
I have been getting.
It would help to put them on the site then, perhaps.
Yeah, I had them, right. Transcription is on. I have been transcribing the sessions at least.
Yeah. So in the case of the education, I didn't have access to slides or a transcript, so the document is relatively weak in that regard. And I think it'd be important, as you know, because Ron was asking about the educational aspect, important to have the best start we can.
Right. I think I can get those and distribute them to people. Who wants to be involved? I mean, everybody. I mean, we should have a communicate committee. Those individuals who want to be involved in this.
You want to set up a Word document online that people can sign up for and take a task?
We should have that.
One interesting thing that came out of the Ontology 101 session was, I can't remember exactly what it was in the example that Bill gave, but Mike Bennett pointed out that that there was a violation of the assumption of inherence of properties in an object when you're talking about, what was it, a regulation? And Bill's answer was, yeah, we're sort of bending that rule, or we're violating that rule, which does give a more general point about when do you adhere strictly to the rules of the ontology. And this is working with the subject matter expert, trying to build their understanding of their own situation. When do you adhere strictly to the rules of the ontology, and when do you bend them or use workarounds? I don't know, Mike, if you want to address that, if you were struck by it. But
actually, what I was struck by was not just that. Something that we did cover in an earlier summit, which is that one way of approaching the ontology development is to gradually become more ontological, more logical. So Gary, I think you were involved in that. Someone you wrote up about that. The idea of
in part that was following up John's statement, which was that the logical expression is really what you're trying to get for whatever use case you have. And I just added the fact that provides the whole context there from a logical point of view. Humans have all kinds of diverse context and thoughts about things, but if you're trying to build this logical based application, which is what you should be doing knowledge engineering for, basically, then you stick to what is logically expressed.
No, I was just saying you could
to
do
your question,
incremental improvements.
to your
So you don't have
question
to
about adherence,
start at the logical level.
right? You can't start at the logical level, Kenneth. You have to first start to figure out what you want to represent. But Janet, to your question about adherence to, say, a standard, e.g., BFO, ontological creation is an engineering process. In engineering, you have to make trade-offs in that we're not doing theology here. And of course, Barry would not like that at all. And BFO has its own challenges, as Barry will at this point recognize easily, as opposed to in the past. In particular, he's still challenged with the representation of the notion of system. So again, this is ontological engineering. Engineering, you make trade-offs, and you have certain requirements you have to meet, and you try and meet them the best you can.
Right, right. So I don't know if we want to say that that was actually a point made in this second session. It did come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely came across that it was not theology.
So Kenneth, back to your point about a logical representation. I know John is big on this also. You can't get there without first understanding what you need to represent. And as it has been noted, people in different domains use words differently, and natural language is to a large extent necessarily ambiguous. But again, one point that has not been made throughout this, and this should possibly be one of the things we could put into the education description, is the need to communicate with humans. And then humans need to communicate with their machines, and the machines need to communicate with each other. And the whole goal of having a computational ontology, as Nicola would say, is to constrain interpretation. But first you have to figure out what those interpretations or interpretation singular should be. And to do that, we have to communicate with each other using natural language, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Well, actually, fortunately, this is one
Okay,
thing.
so the theme should be that one of the themes we could work with is the notion of communication. And then certainly in the case of interoperability, that's the basis for the needing for interoperability. You want to communicate, transmit information among parties involved.
Right, right. But one point I want to make is that in those 12 slides that I sent, slide 7 is where I have the cognitive cycle. But prior to that, I emphasize the point that people do not that language is just a tiny expression of what people are thinking, that the world is so much more complex than anything we can put in words, that what we're hit with is an immense complexity, and there's a large number of the feelings and the interpretation that and the expression in visual forms and in various kind of feelings that are much, much richer than anything we can put into our ordinary language. So that natural language is just a rough approximation to what we're actually feeling and thinking constantly. And so the first part, so I said that cognitive cycle comes in at cycle at number 7, but there's the earlier parts of the slides where I summarize the point that the in fact, one of the things that I cite is there are 2 people that I cite. That is the Albert Einstein, who said that he does not do the formalism at all at the beginning. At the beginning, it's all very feeling. It's his feelings and natural are much more important than the actual precision in mathematics. The mathematics comes at the end. It does not come at the beginning. And so there's that whole part about perception, which is absolutely essential. And that is something that you cannot get into your LLMs. LLMs are based on language, which is just a tiny fraction of what people are actually feeling and thinking. So, and that is one reason why you also need that final section at the end where in the reasoning part, you want to be able to bring in information from a wide range of other areas other than just the language.
Okay, so now we have a few more minutes. So do you want me to set up a kind of sign up document? I'll set up a document,
Or
Google Doc, and let people.
the intent of the
Sign up for
document is
this?
what, Kenneth?
How do we want to get, do this organizationally? I mean, one way would be just to have people send me emails. And I'll make up the document. Or do you want to have
Okay,
a public
I'm
document
confused.
that people instead it?
So I'm confused as to what you're suggesting, Kenneth.
How are we going to organize this work?
Ah,
The next
okay.
session, communique session, is where we actually assign tasks and everything. Today is more just coming up with ideas for the synthesis.
Well, is there agreement that we need two separate documents, one for the retrospective and one for this year's summit?
There's going to be at least two,
Okay.
possibly three or four. A number of themes have been floated today, and I think we definitely need to cover those. And just even two documents might not be enough. The first half of the summit, we had foundations and tools. And we also had ontologies and AI. And those are in kind of related but different themes for the summit. And we, of course, had the retrospective. I think each of the parts of the summit merits its own document.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Well, we have to split it up. And so that's what I'm asking now. And you just, can we just handle this by email, or do you want to have some kind of document that we share? Any suggestion?
So Ken,
Well, we
I
could
missed a
start
little
with
bit.
emails and see if that's sufficient. We overload ourselves.
I think one of the things, Ken, that you might want to do as you were doing before is to come up with some kind of an outline here. And
Yes,
I
I can
think
do that.
Is that
you
based on the
normally do.
four subjects?
Yeah. If you want to synthesize
Yeah, I'll
everything
come
into
up with
one,
this.
or you want to do separate, Ken has to come up with a master. He always does come up with a master plan, and then people kind of pick up from there and go and do their tasks.
Yeah, I can do that, and I'll post it on the session page and also to the to the forum. And invite comments and suggestions. And then next week, at the communique session, we will make the decisions about how to proceed, whether that outline works, and who wants to contribute to each part. So we divide up the work. Nobody's going to do more than one part of one of these
Okay.
units. Hopefully we'll keep the amount of work for individuals down to something manageable over the summer.
So for sharing work, many other things I'm involved in have something like a Google Drive where you can have folders, so we could have a folder for the 25-year item. We could have a folder for the AI and tools and foundations topic, and then we could have a folder for the second half, which includes education interoperability, if that's the way we divide it, at least 3 parts. But it would be nice to have a folder where we could put things and then people can look at them and make suggestions on that. I don't think we've done that in the past, but rather than sending all the files to Ken and having him just have exclusive access to them, it'd be better to share something.
Yeah, I would prefer to do it that way, but when we tried to do that in the past, it wasn't successful. But let's try it again. Maybe it'll work this time.
And then you can put in that, whatever that folder is, you can put the sign up assignments for the committee members and what they're trying to do at this point. And then then we'll be able to post to that. Then I will put some of the things I've done, which is the draft paper and the slides and a synthesis on section 1 also, part 1 also. I can put at least those 3 things there.
Okay, we'll do that.
And John could put
this
there. Well, he shared his, so any of us could put his slides there too.
So who should have access to all of this? So I have to say who to share it with.
I don't have everybody's email that's on this call. I have some, but I don't have everybody. So that's an issue, being in touch with each other.
Yeah, it would be good to get
and we could put them into the chat. People that are interested in being part of the committee could put their emails in the chat, and then Ken would have them and give permission to those people.
In the chat, I'll make a Google group. Yeah, and so we can send email to each other, and I'll give access to the Google folders to everyone in that group. So just put it in the chat. That's a good way to get this going. Okay, yeah, put your email address that you wish to use in the chat right now, and I'll add you to this group. And then you'll have access to the Google folders. So the idea is to minimize how much each individual has to work on this. So we don't want everybody doing everything. Communication is definitely important. We need to communicate with each other. And we'll try this scheme as a way of doing the communication.
So if I could make one comment on one of Janet's recent posts here, where essentially this happens often, where we're trying to, in the communique, to cover what has been expressed as part of our discussion, but often a person sees some additional things that might not have been dwelt on. And in the past, what we've done for that is not necessarily do too much on the communique, but allow a separate article to be written that gets also published along with the communique.
Right. And I was posting that in the chat in response to Todd, that the Proto-Indo-European roots of communicate is together and change. So communicating is changing together. Munis, mutatis, that's change, and co is obviously together. So interoperation and changing together are really two faces of communicating, and so the varieties in the natural language prevent us from seeing that core root of changing together.
Okay, good. We're getting.
Thank you, Janet.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah, I guess I
We've
can
got-
see educational communication as part of education being something within the original focus of the tracks. I'm not sure our speakers really covered that too much.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
No, but it's one of those implicit things that everyone assumes.
Yeah.
You know, if nothing else, when you have a communique, at the end you have sort of implications or discussion of things, and that could be essentially saying, look at this important connection was sort of missed. We didn't really discuss it, but we think it's important for the following reasons. So that it could be covered that way.
Oh, it's a thought. Thank you.
Yeah, so try to include all of these ideas in the shared folders. I should add, if you're going to use some AI tool or even just some search engine, it would help if you would cite what engine you used. So it would be good to capture that. So
So Kenneth,
always
if we're using some of these tools, do you mean in the actual final creation or in intermediate products before we get to the final?
At this point, it's very preliminary, just helping us getting going as humans and adding each of our expertise and review of it. I think that's the way I view it, as an assistant at this point.
It's an
Yes,
assistant.
but I'm not sure what Kenneth's asking for
I'm
in
just
terms of citing
saying,
it.
Cite it if you use it in what you post. If you just use it as an intermediary, and then you write up what you're posting, I don't think it's necessary to put a citation for it. Only if you actually
thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, if you include something that was generated.
Well, this is just one of many experiments going on. I assumed this type of audience would have a lot to say about the writing, and I wasn't worried that it was going to be sort of an AI type of thing, because there's just lots of ideas here. You can see how people are taking different topics and sort of. So, I assume somebody like Mike Bennett is going to look at a little bit of a draft, which was extracted from his slides, I believe, and just sort of essentially rewrite that, expand that until he's comfortable with it.
Ultimately, I don't think the communique is going to be AI generated or any of the associated articles. I'm talking about what you post in the Google folders.
We could do a comparison. Say this following is the human generated communique, and now there's another one, AI generated.
That would be.
You can look at both of them.
Ken, do you need Google addresses to give us access to Google folders?
Not really. I don't think so
I
because
don't
he
think
has to.
so.
Yeah, he has to give you permission. That's all.
Okay.
If it's Gmail, it's okay. But if you have any other email address, he just has to give you permission.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to get permission, and it doesn't have to be a Gmail address. Um, okay, any other comments? Okay, great. So see you all next week, and get to work
All right.
this week. On
This time we
the,
have light homework assignments.
All right.
you
Even
have your
next week
homework
after the
assignments.
homework.
I still
Okay.
haven't finished one from last week.
But could somebody? I was a little surprised when I wanted to go to a Zoom session the other day. You know, not my session; it was someone else's thing. They gave me a link, went to, followed the link, and I got a response that I had never seen before. It said, "I am not allowed to use this link because I'm in Canada."
Mm.
Oh.
Can you restrict your Zoom sessions to a
Yeah.
country?
Mm-hmm. You can.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah. Because it happened to me.
Yeah, this is the first time I'd seen that.
I was in India, and we had this Washington Academy of Sciences meeting. Ken, I tried to log in from there, and I couldn't through the Zoom session, so I had to do by telephone. If you remember, this was some time ago,
I
last
see.
December.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
they had something in there which I think we need to change the permission or something like that.
Yeah, it's anyway. Our sessions here, of course, are universal, no restriction.
Mm.
Right. And Gary had raised the question of whether the AI meeting notes, are those available somewhere?
I will capture. I'll get whatever I have because I have been taking
Because
notes.
Robbie has been running the AI. We keep getting announcements that Robbie is adding read.ai meeting notes.
Right, Ravi's doing it. I'm doing it.
Oh,
I'll
good.
put it into the Google folders.
Okay, very good. Okay, see you next week.
So I'll put everything that I have been able to acquire.
Good.
Okay, so I'll see you all next week.
Very good.
Thank you.